The Tri-State Tornado, 1925, the deadliest tornado in U.S. history. Have you ever wondered what it would be like to witness nature's most destructive force? Picture this. It's March 18, 1925, a seemingly ordinary Wednesday afternoon in the American Midwest. The temperature is unusually warm for mid-March, reaching into the 60s and 70s across Missouri, Illinois, and Indiana. Children are in school, miners are working their shifts, and families are going about their daily routines. But in just a few hours, a single tornado will carve a path of destruction unlike anything ever recorded in human history. This tornado would travel 219 miles across 3 states in just 3.5 hours. It would kill 695 people and injure over 2,000 more. It would destroy entire towns, leaving some communities completely erased from the map. The Tri-State Tornado remains the deadliest tornado in United States history, and nearly a century later, no tornado has come close to matching its devastating impact. But this isn't just a story about destruction. It's about the meteorological perfect storm that created this monster, the communities that faced unimaginable devastation, the heroes who emerged from the chaos, and how this single event changed the way America approaches severe weather forever. I've spent months researching historical records, survivor accounts, and meteorological data to bring you the most comprehensive examination of this disaster ever presented. In this video, we'll follow the tornado's path minute by minute, town by town. We'll hear from survivors who lived through the unthinkable. We'll examine the weather conditions that created this atmospheric monster. And we'll explore how the lessons learned from this tragedy have saved countless lives in the decades since. By the end of this video, you'll understand not just what happened on that March afternoon in 1925, but why it happened and whether something like this could happen again. The story begins not with the tornado itself, but with the unique weather pattern that made it possible. March 18, 1925 was no ordinary day meteorologically speaking. A powerful low-pressure system was moving northeast across the central United States, creating what meteorologists now recognize as ideal conditions for severe weather. But in 1925, the science of meteorology was still in its infancy. There was no National Weather Service as we know it today, no Doppler radar, no satellite imagery, and most importantly, no tornado warnings. The morning of March 18th brought unseasonably warm temperatures across the Mississippi River Valley. In southern Missouri, temperatures climbed into the upper 60s by mid-morning, with some areas reaching the low 70s. This warm, moist air was flowing northward from the Gulf of Mexico, carrying with it tremendous amounts of atmospheric energy. Meanwhile, high above in the upper atmosphere, a powerful jet stream was racing eastward, bringing cold, dry air from the Rocky Mountains. These contrasting air masses were on a collision course over the heartland of America. What made this situation particularly dangerous was the presence of what meteorologists call a capping inversion, a layer of warm air sitting above the cooler, moist air near the surface. This acted like a lid on a pressure cooker, trapping energy in the lower atmosphere until it reached a critical breaking point. By noon on March 18th, atmospheric pressure was dropping rapidly across the region. The wind shear, the difference in wind speed and direction at different altitudes, was extreme. Modern meteorologists who have studied the atmospheric data from that day describe the conditions as nearly perfect for creating what we now call a supercell thunderstorm, the most powerful and long-lasting type of severe weather system. At approximately 1 p.m. Central Time near the small farming community of Ellington in Reynolds County, Missouri, the atmosphere finally reached its breaking point. Witnesses in the area reported seeing a massive, dark cloud formation that seemed to descend from the sky and touch the ground. What they were witnessing was the birth of what would become the most devastating tornado in American history. Unlike typical tornadoes, which usually remain on the ground for only a few minutes and travel relatively short distances, this tornado would defy every norm. From the moment it touched down near Ellington, it began moving in an almost perfectly straight line toward the northeast, maintaining contact with the ground for the entire 219-mile journey across 3 states. The tornado's first victim was the small community of Annapolis, Missouri, population approximately 300. The tornado struck Annapolis at 1:15 p.m., and within minutes, the town was virtually erased from the map. Of the roughly 75 buildings in Annapolis, only a handful remained standing. 4 people were killed, and dozens more were injured. But this was just the beginning of the tornado's deadly journey. As the tornado continued northeast through Missouri, it maintained its incredible intensity and forward speed. Most tornadoes travel at an average speed of 30 miles per hour, but the tri-state tornado was racing forward at an average of 62 miles per hour, sometimes reaching speeds of up to 73 miles per hour. This extraordinary forward speed meant that people had very little time to seek shelter, even if they had been warned of the approaching danger. The tornado's path through Missouri was approximately 65 miles long, and it remained on the ground for the entire distance. As it approached the Mississippi River, the tornado was already demonstrating characteristics that would make it unique in the annals of severe weather history. It was maintaining a consistent width of approximately 3/4 of a mile, with some witnesses reporting that it appeared to be over a mile wide at times. At 2:30 p.m., the tornado crossed the Mississippi River and entered Illinois, where it would cause the most devastating destruction of its entire journey. The first Illinois community in its path was the small mining town of Gorham in Jackson County. Gorham had a population of about 500 people, most of whom worked in the local coal mines or the railroad yards. The tornado struck Gorham with incredible fury. Witnesses described the sound as like 1,000 freight trains, or the roar of 1,000,000 lions. The tornado was so powerful that it lifted a 15-ton railroad car containing 20 passengers and threw it 75 feet into a nearby ditch. Miraculously, most of the passengers survived, though many were seriously injured. In Gorham, 34 people were killed and over 200 were injured. Approximately 90% of the town's buildings were destroyed or severely damaged. But the worst was yet to come. The tornado's next target was Murfreesboro, Illinois, a thriving city of approximately 11,000 people located in Jackson County. Murfreesboro was a regional hub, home to several industries, including railroad shops, lumber mills, and coal mines. The city had a bustling downtown district, numerous schools, churches, and residential neighborhoods. In just a few minutes, the tri-state tornado would transform this prosperous community into a scene of unimaginable devastation. The tornado struck Murfreesboro at approximately 2:34 p.m. Modern meteorologists estimate that the tornado had reached its peak intensity by this point, with winds likely exceeding 300 miles per hour, strong enough to earn an F5 rating on today's enhanced Fujita scale. The tornado was now at its maximum width, estimated at nearly 1 mile across. The destruction in Murfreesboro was apocalyptic. Entire city blocks were flattened as if they had been bombed. The tornado's path through the city was about 2 miles wide, encompassing both the downtown business district and several residential neighborhoods. The Longfellow School, a 3-story brick building that housed hundreds of students, collapsed when the tornado struck. 17 children and 1 teacher were killed when the building pancaked, trapping dozens of students and faculty in the rubble. At the Mobile and Ohio Railroad shops, which employed hundreds of workers, the tornado struck during the afternoon shift change. The massive brick buildings collapsed, killing 35 workers and injuring scores more. The tornado was so powerful that it lifted locomotives, weighing over 100 tons, and threw them hundreds of feet from the tracks. In the residential areas of Murfreesboro, entire neighborhoods simply vanished. Houses were not just destroyed, they were obliterated, with debris scattered for miles. The tornado's incredible forward speed meant that many residents had no time to seek shelter. Some were caught in their homes, others in the streets as they tried to flee. The human toll in Murfreesboro was staggering. In just a few minutes, 234 people were killed, the highest death toll ever recorded for a single community in a tornado event. Over 800 people were injured, many critically. Approximately 40% of the city was destroyed, leaving thousands homeless. But the tornado was far from finished. After devastating Murfreesboro, it continued its relentless march northeast, striking the town of DeSoto, Illinois, at approximately 2:42 p.m. DeSoto was a smaller community with a population of about 600, but it would suffer proportionally devastating losses. The tornado struck DeSoto School just as classes were ending for the day. The DeSoto School was a two-story brick building that housed students from grades 1 through 12. When the tornado hit, the building collapsed instantly, trapping dozens of children and teachers in the rubble. 33 children were killed, along with several teachers and staff members. The loss of so many young lives in a single moment remains one of the most heartbreaking aspects of the entire disaster. In total, 69 people were killed in DeSoto, representing more than 10% of the town's entire population. The community was so devastated that many residents never returned, and the town never fully recovered its pre-tornado population. The tornado continued its deadly path through Illinois, striking the communities of Hurstbush, Ziegler, and West Frankfort. In West Frankfort, a coal mining town of about 18,000 people, the tornado killed 148 residents and injured over 400 more. The tornado struck the town's main business district and several residential areas, destroying hundreds of buildings and leaving thousands homeless. One of the most remarkable aspects of the tornado's path through West Frankfort was its precision. The tornado followed a narrow corridor through the town, completely destroying everything in its direct path while leaving buildings just a few hundred feet away virtually untouched. This phenomenon, known as the Finger of God effect, demonstrated the incredible concentration of the tornado's destructive power. As the tornado continued northeast through Illinois, it struck several smaller communities, including Orient, Parrish, and Crossville. In each location, the pattern was the same: complete destruction along the tornado's path, with death tolls that were devastating for small rural communities. The tornado's journey through Illinois covered approximately 110 miles and lasted about 2 hours. By the time it crossed into Indiana at approximately 4 p.m., it had killed 613 people in Illinois alone, making it the deadliest tornado in that state's history. The tornado entered Indiana near the town of Griffin in Posey County. Griffin was a small farming community with a population of about 100 people. The tornado struck the town's school, but fortunately, classes had been dismissed early due to the threatening weather. The quick thinking of the school's principal, who had noticed the darkening skies and decided to send the children home, likely saved dozens of young lives. Despite the early dismissal, Griffin suffered significant casualties. 25 people were killed in the small community, and most of the town's buildings were destroyed. The tornado then continued northeast toward Princeton, Indiana, the county seat of Gibson County. Princeton was the largest community that the tornado would strike in Indiana, with a population of about 9,000 people. The tornado hit Princeton at approximately 4:15 p.m., striking the southern part of the city. The destruction was severe, with dozens of homes and businesses destroyed, but the death toll was relatively lower than in the Illinois communities. 45 people were killed and over 200 were injured. The tornado's path through Princeton was about half a mile wide and extended for approximately 2 miles through the city. The tornado destroyed several schools, churches, and the city's main hospital, creating additional challenges for treating the injured. After leaving Princeton, the tornado continued northeast for about 15 more miles before finally dissipating near Petersburg, Indiana at approximately 4:30 p.m. Central Time. The tornado had been on the ground for 3.5 hours, traveled 219 miles across 3 states, and left a trail of destruction unlike anything ever recorded in American history. The final statistics of the tri-state tornado are staggering. A total of 695 people were killed, making it the deadliest tornado in United States history. Over 2,000 people were injured, many critically. The tornado destroyed or severely damaged over 15,000 homes and caused an estimated $16.5 million in damage, equivalent to approximately $250 million in today's currency. But statistics alone cannot convey the human dimension of this disaster. Behind every number was a real person, a child, a parent, a grandparent, a friend, whose life was forever changed by a few minutes of nature's fury. To truly understand the impact of the tri-state tornado, we need to hear the stories of those who lived through it. In Murfreesboro, Illinois, 10-year-old Judith Cox Miller was attending classes at the Longfellow School when the tornado struck. She later recalled the terrifying moments as the building began to shake. The windows suddenly exploded inward, showering us with glass. Our teacher, Miss Thompson, yelled for us to get under our desks. Then I heard this incredible roaring sound, like nothing I'd ever heard before. The next thing I knew, the ceiling was gone and I could see the sky. Then the walls started falling in. Judith was trapped under debris for over an hour before rescuers could reach her. She suffered a broken arm and numerous cuts from flying glass, but she was one of the fortunate ones. 17 of her classmates and one teacher died when the school collapsed. In DeSoto, Illinois, coal miner James Perrine had just returned home from his shift at the local mine when he noticed the approaching storm. He described what happened next. "I saw this black wall coming toward us from the southwest. It looked like the end of the world. I grabbed my wife and our 2 young children, and we ran for the storm cellar behind our house. We barely made it inside before our house was torn apart above us. When we finally came out, there was nothing left. Not just of our house, but of most of the town. It looked like a war zone." The Perrin family survived, but they lost everything they owned. Like thousands of other families affected by the tornado, they had to start their lives over from nothing. Perhaps one of the most remarkable survival stories comes from Murfreesboro, where 4-year-old Betty Williams was literally blown out of her mother's arms when their house collapsed. Betty was found 2 hours later, a quarter-mile away from where her house had stood, lying unconscious in a field, but otherwise unharmed. Tragically, her mother and infant brother were both killed in the collapse. The tornado also created countless heroes. In Griffin, Indiana, schoolteacher Elizabeth Darling noticed the approaching storm and quickly led her 38 students into the school's basement. As the building began to collapse around them, she shielded several children with her own body, suffering severe injuries but saving their lives. All of her students survived. In West Frankfort, Illinois, Dr. John Thompson worked tirelessly in the aftermath of the tornado, performing 156 surgeries in the 48 hours following the disaster. With the town's hospital destroyed and electricity knocked out, Dr. Thompson operated by lantern light in makeshift medical facilities. He worked without rest until he collapsed from exhaustion, but his efforts saved dozens of lives. The immediate aftermath of the tri-state tornado was chaotic. Communication systems were destroyed, making it difficult to coordinate rescue efforts. Roads were blocked by debris, preventing emergency vehicles from reaching affected areas. Many communities were completely cut off from the outside world for hours or even days. In Murfreesboro, the city's fire department was destroyed, along with most of its equipment. The police station was also heavily damaged. With local emergency services overwhelmed or destroyed, residents had to organize their own rescue efforts. Neighbors helped neighbors dig through the rubble, searching for survivors. Makeshift hospitals were established in churches, schools, and any building that remained standing. The scale of the disaster quickly became apparent to state and federal officials. Illinois Governor Len Small declared a state of emergency and called out the National Guard to assist with rescue and recovery efforts. President Calvin Coolidge authorized federal assistance and mobilized the American Red Cross to coordinate relief efforts. The Red Cross response to the tri-state tornado was one of the largest disaster relief operations in the organization's history up to that point. Within 24 hours of the tornado, Red Cross workers were on the scene providing emergency shelter, food, and medical care to survivors. The organization established temporary hospitals, distributed clothing and supplies, and helped coordinate the massive cleanup effort. Over the following weeks and months, the Red Cross would spend over $2.5 million on relief efforts, equivalent to approximately $40 million in today's currency. The organization provided temporary housing for thousands of families, helped rebuild schools and hospitals, and assisted survivors in getting back on their feet. The tri-state tornado exposed critical weaknesses in America's weather forecasting and warning systems. In 1925, the United States Weather Bureau, the predecessor to today's National Weather Service, had actually prohibited the use of the word tornado in weather forecasts. Officials feared that tornado warnings would cause panic and were concerned about their ability to accurately predict these storms. This policy meant that communities in the path of the tri-state tornado had no advance warning whatsoever. People went about their normal activities. Children attended school, workers reported to their jobs, families prepared dinner, completely unaware that a deadly tornado was bearing down on them. The disaster forced a complete reevaluation of this approach. In the months following the tornado, Weather Bureau officials began studying the atmospheric conditions that had created the storm. They interviewed survivors, examined the damage patterns, and worked to understand how such a powerful and long-lasting tornado could have formed. This research led to groundbreaking advances in tornado science. Meteorologists began to understand the relationship between wind shear, atmospheric instability, and tornado formation. They developed new techniques for analyzing weather patterns and identifying conditions favorable for severe weather development. The tri-state tornado also sparked innovations in communication and warning systems. Officials recognized that even if they could predict tornadoes, they needed effective ways to warn the public. This led to the development of emergency broadcasting systems, civil defense sirens, and eventually the tornado warning system we rely on today. The rebuilding process in the affected communities was both heartbreaking and inspiring. In Murfreesboro, city officials faced the daunting task of rebuilding nearly half of their community. The downtown business district had to be completely reconstructed. Hundreds of families needed new homes. The school system had to be rebuilt from the ground up. But the people of Murfreesboro and the other affected communities showed remarkable resilience. Within days of the tornado, cleanup efforts were underway. Volunteers from across the region poured in to help with the recovery. Donations of money, food, clothing, and building materials arrived from all over the country. The rebuilding process incorporated many lessons learned from the disaster. New buildings were constructed with stronger foundations and reinforced structures. Schools were designed with safety in mind, incorporating basement shelters and reinforced safe rooms. Building codes were strengthened to require structures that could better withstand high winds. Many communities also developed emergency preparedness plans for the first time. They established evacuation procedures, designated emergency shelters, and created communication systems to warn residents of approaching severe weather. These innovations would prove invaluable in protecting lives during future tornado events. The tri-state tornado had profound effects on American meteorology and disaster preparedness that extended far beyond the immediate affected areas. The disaster demonstrated that tornadoes could be far more destructive and long-lasting than previously understood. It showed that a single weather event could cause casualties and damage on a scale comparable to major industrial accidents or transportation disasters. This realization led to increased federal involvement in weather forecasting and disaster response. The Weather Bureau received additional funding for research and equipment. New weather observation stations were established across the Midwest to provide better coverage of severe weather events. The tornado also influenced the development of building codes and construction practices across the United States. The complete destruction of well-built brick and stone structures in the tornado's path demonstrated that traditional construction methods were inadequate to withstand extreme winds. This led to research into wind-resistant design and the development of new construction standards. In the field of emergency medicine, the tri-state tornado highlighted the need for better disaster response capabilities. The overwhelming number of casualties in a short period of time exposed weaknesses in medical emergency response systems. This led to improvements in emergency medical training, the development of mobile medical units, and better coordination between hospitals and emergency services. The psychological impact of the tri-state tornado on survivors and their communities was profound and long-lasting. Many survivors suffered from what we would now recognize as post-traumatic stress disorder, though this condition was not well understood in 1925. The sudden, violent loss of family members, friends, and entire communities left deep emotional scars that lasted for decades. Children who survived the tornado were particularly affected. Many had witnessed the deaths of classmates, teachers, or family members. Some had been trapped under debris for hours, listening to the cries of other victims. The trauma of these experiences affected their development and shaped their lives in ways that are still being studied by psychologists today. The communities affected by the tornado developed strong bonds forged by their shared experience of survival and rebuilding. Annual memorial services were established to remember the victims and honor the survivors. These gatherings became important community events that helped preserve the memory of the disaster and its lessons for future generations. As the years passed, the tri-state tornado became a benchmark against which all other tornadoes were measured. Meteorologists studying severe weather would refer to the tri-state standard when describing particularly intense or long-track tornadoes. The event became a case study in disaster preparedness, emergency response, and community resilience. The scientific legacy of the tri-state tornado continued to grow as new research techniques became available. In the 1970s, Dr. Ted Fujita developed the Fujita scale for rating tornado intensity based on damage patterns. When he applied this scale retroactively to historical tornadoes, the tri-state tornado received an F5 rating, the highest possible classification. Modern computer modeling and atmospheric analysis have allowed scientists to better understand the meteorological conditions that created the tri-state tornado. Research conducted in the 1990s and 2000s using advanced weather models confirmed that the atmospheric setup on March 18, 1925, was indeed extraordinary. The combination of wind shear, atmospheric instability, and moisture content created nearly perfect conditions for a long-track, violent tornado. This research has also helped scientists understand why the tri-state tornado was able to maintain its intensity for such an unusually long distance. Most tornadoes weaken as they travel due to changes in the atmospheric environment or interactions with terrain. The tri-state tornado, however, traveled through an atmospheric environment that remained consistently favorable for tornado maintenance throughout its entire 219-mile journey. The question of whether another tornado like the tri-state could occur again has been a subject of ongoing scientific debate. From a purely meteorological standpoint, the atmospheric conditions that created the 1925 tornado could certainly occur again. Similar weather patterns have been observed numerous times since 1925, though none have produced a tornado of comparable magnitude. Several factors make a repeat of the tri-state tornado less likely today, however. Modern farming practices have changed the landscape of the Midwest, with larger fields and fewer trees that might help disrupt a tornado's circulation. Urban development has also altered local weather patterns in ways that could affect tornado formation and maintenance. More importantly, our ability to detect and warn of approaching tornadoes has improved dramatically since 1925. The National Weather Service now operates a network of Doppler radar stations that can detect tornado formation up to 30 minutes before the tornado reaches the ground. Tornado warnings are now issued an average of 13 minutes before a tornado strikes, giving people crucial time to seek shelter. Emergency alert systems can instantly notify millions of people through television, radio, cell phones, and outdoor warning sirens. These advances in warning systems have dramatically reduced tornado fatalities. While the number of tornadoes reported each year has actually increased since 1925, largely due to better detection and reporting, the death rate per tornado has dropped significantly. The last tornado to kill more than 100 people was the Joplin, Missouri tornado in 2011, which killed 161 people, despite striking a much more densely populated area than the communities hit by the tri-state tornado. Building codes and construction practices have also evolved significantly since 1925. Modern structures, particularly public buildings like schools and hospitals, are designed to withstand much stronger winds than their 1925 counterparts. The widespread use of reinforced concrete, steel framing, and engineered connections has made buildings much more resistant to tornado damage. Safe rooms and storm shelters have become common features in tornado-prone areas. Many schools now have reinforced areas specifically designed to protect students and staff during tornado events. Residential storm shelters, while not universal, are much more common than they were in 1925. Despite these improvements, the potential for a catastrophic tornado event still exists. Climate change is altering the atmospheric patterns that create tornadoes in ways that scientists are still working to understand. Some research suggests that while the total number of tornadoes may not be increasing dramatically, the number of days with multiple strong tornadoes, known as tornado outbreaks, appears to be rising. The geographic distribution of tornadoes is also shifting. Traditional Tornado Alley in the Great Plains is seeing fewer tornadoes, while the southeastern United States is experiencing more frequent and intense tornado activity. This shift is concerning because the Southeast has a higher population density, more mobile homes, and more forested terrain that can hide approaching tornadoes from view. Several tornadoes since 1925 have demonstrated that extremely destructive events are still possible. The April 27, 2011 tornado outbreak produced multiple EF4 and EF5 tornadoes across the southeastern United States, killing 324 people in a single day. The Tuscaloosa-Birmingham EF4 tornado traveled 80.7 miles and killed 64 people, while the Hackleburg-Phil Campbell EF5 tornado traveled 132 miles and killed 72 people. The May 20, 2013 Moore, Oklahoma tornado reached EF5 intensity and killed 24 people, including 7 children at Plaza Towers Elementary School. Despite modern warning systems and construction standards, this tornado demonstrated that schools remain vulnerable to the most violent tornadoes. Perhaps most remarkably, the December 10th to 11th, 2021 tornado outbreak produced what became known as the Quad State tornado, which traveled 165.7 miles across Arkansas, Missouri, Tennessee, and Kentucky. This tornado killed 57 people and was on the ground for over 3 hours, making it the closest parallel to the tri-state tornado in nearly a century. The Quad State tornado highlighted both how far we've come and how far we still have to go in tornado preparedness. While the death toll was significantly lower than what might have been expected from a similar tornado in 1925, the event still caused tremendous destruction and loss of life. It also occurred primarily at night, when people were sleeping and less likely to receive or respond to warnings. Modern meteorologists continue to study the tri-state tornado to better understand extreme tornado events. Advanced computer models can now simulate the atmospheric conditions of March 18, 1925, providing insights into the storm's development and behavior that weren't possible when the event occurred. These studies have revealed that the tri-state tornado was likely what meteorologists now call a tornado family, a series of tornadoes produced by the same supercell thunderstorm. While it appeared to be a single continuous tornado, it may have actually been multiple tornadoes that formed in quick succession along the same path, creating the illusion of one extremely long-track tornado. This understanding has implications for how we classify and study extreme tornado events. It suggests that the atmospheric conditions capable of producing long-track tornadoes may be more complex than previously understood, involving the interaction of multiple mesocyclones within a single supercell storm. The legacy of the tri-state tornado extends beyond meteorology and disaster preparedness into the realm of American cultural memory. The tornado has been the subject of numerous books, documentaries, and academic studies. Survivors and their descendants have worked to preserve the memory of the event through historical societies, museums, and annual memorial services. In Murfreesboro, Illinois, the Jackson County Historical Society maintains extensive archives related to the tornado, including photographs, survivor accounts, and artifacts recovered from the debris. The Society has worked to ensure that the lessons of the disaster are not forgotten and that future generations understand both the destructive power of tornadoes and the resilience of the human spirit. Similar preservation efforts exist in other communities affected by the tornado. In Princeton, Indiana, the Gibson County Historical Society has collected oral histories from survivors and their families. These first-hand accounts provide invaluable insights into not just the meteorological aspects of the tornado, but the human experience of surviving such a catastrophic event. The tri-state tornado also influenced American literature and popular culture. The disaster appeared in numerous newspaper accounts, magazine articles, and books in the years following the event. It became a symbol of both nature's destructive power and human resilience in the face of overwhelming adversity. Educational institutions have used the tri-state tornado as a case study in multiple disciplines. Meteorology students study the atmospheric conditions that created the storm. Emergency management students examine the disaster response and recovery efforts. Psychology students learn about trauma and community resilience. Engineering students analyze the structural failures and design improvements that resulted from the disaster. The tornado has also played a role in the development of disaster sociology as an academic discipline. Researchers have studied how communities respond to and recover from catastrophic events, using the tri-state tornado as one of their primary historical examples. This research has informed modern disaster response planning and community resilience strategies. As we look toward the future, the lessons of the tri-state tornado remain relevant and important. Climate change is creating new challenges for severe weather prediction and preparedness. Rising global temperatures are altering atmospheric circulation patterns in ways that could affect tornado formation and behavior. Some climate models suggest that the conditions favorable for tornado development may become more common in certain regions while becoming less common in others. The traditional tornado season may be extending longer into the year, and the peak months for tornado activity may be shifting. These changes require ongoing adaptation of our warning systems, building codes, and emergency preparedness plans. The increasing frequency of extreme weather events of all types, not just tornadoes, but also hurricanes, floods, and severe thunderstorms, underscores the importance of maintaining and improving our disaster preparedness capabilities. The tri-state tornado demonstrated that a single weather event can overwhelm local emergency services and require coordinated regional and national response efforts. Modern emergency management has evolved to address these challenges through improved coordination between local, state, and federal agencies. The Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, established in 1979, provides a framework for disaster response that didn't exist in 1925. The National Weather Service has expanded its capabilities far beyond what the Weather Bureau could provide in the 1920s. However, new challenges continue to emerge. The increasing reliance on electronic communication systems creates vulnerabilities that didn't exist in 1925. A major tornado that destroys cell phone towers and internet infrastructure could potentially leave communities more isolated than they were nearly a century ago, when telegraph and telephone systems provided backup communication options. The concentration of population in urban areas also creates new risks. While rural communities like those struck by the tri-state tornado had limited emergency services, they also had lower population densities. A tornado striking a modern metropolitan area could potentially cause casualties on a scale that would dwarf even the tri-state disaster. Despite these challenges, the overall trend in tornado safety has been positive. The combination of improved forecasting, better warning systems, stronger building codes, and enhanced emergency preparedness has dramatically reduced the risk of tornado-related deaths. The average annual tornado death toll in the United States has decreased from over 100 per year in the early 20th century to fewer than 80 per year in recent decades, despite a growing population and better tornado detection. The story of the tri-state tornado is ultimately a story of human resilience and scientific progress. From the ashes of the destroyed communities came innovations in meteorology, emergency management, and disaster preparedness that have saved countless lives. The survivors of the tornado and their descendants have worked to ensure that the lessons learned from this tragedy continue to benefit future generations. The communities struck by the tri-state tornado have long since rebuilt and recovered. Modern Murfreesboro, DeSoto, Princeton, and the other affected towns bear little resemblance to their 1925 counterparts. New buildings have replaced those destroyed by the tornado. New families have moved in to replace those lost or displaced by the disaster. But the memory of March 18, 1925, lives on. Memorial markers in each community commemorate the victims and honor the survivors. Annual remembrance ceremonies bring together descendants of survivors, local historians, and meteorologists to reflect on the disaster and its lessons. These observances serve not just as memorials to the past, but as reminders of the ongoing need for vigilance and preparedness. The tri-state tornado stands as a testament to both the awesome power of nature and the remarkable resilience of human communities. In just 3.5 hours, it demonstrated that a single weather event could cause destruction on a scale comparable to major industrial disasters or military conflicts. But in the months and years that followed, it also demonstrated that communities could rebuild, adapt, and emerge stronger than before. As we face an uncertain climate future, the lessons of the tri-state tornado remain as relevant as ever. We must continue to improve our understanding of severe weather, enhance our warning systems, strengthen our buildings, and prepare our communities for the challenges that lie ahead. We must remember that while we cannot prevent tornadoes, we can minimize their impact through science, preparation, and the enduring human spirit that enabled the survivors of March 18, 1925, to rebuild their lives and communities. The tri-state tornado of 1925 will forever remain the deadliest tornado in American history. But more than that, it remains a powerful reminder of our vulnerability to nature's forces and our capacity to learn, adapt, and persevere in the face of unimaginable adversity. The 695 people who lost their lives that day did not die in vain if their sacrifice continues to inspire us to better protect future generations from similar disasters. Nearly a century later, we honor their memory not just through monuments and memorials, but through our continued commitment to understanding severe weather, improving our preparedness, and building more resilient communities. The story of the tri-state tornado is not just a story of destruction and death, it is a story of survival, recovery, and the triumph of human determination over the most challenging circumstances nature can provide.